What a week in New York sports as we're now in playoff season for our winter sports. The Knicks, Rangers, the Islanders, they're all in the postseason, and they start play this weekend. So much to talk about this week, and we're going to get into the hottest three topics in Big Apple sports. We're going to do it with a man who you've seen at this desk with me, mainly to talk women's basketball, but he's a lover of a variety of sports and a great sports journalist. He works as a New York Liberty beat reporter for Winsider and is the co-host of Pull Up with Myles and Owen. My guy, Myles Ehrlich. Myles, what's going on, man?
Not too much, Dex. A very busy sports weekend here.
It is a busy sports, and I'll call this one, this is a fun week and weekend, because we're going to talk about some news around an exciting time in New York sports. I think it's always exciting when you get here to the spring and the playoffs are right there. So for the first time on the show this week, we're going to talk about the New York Islanders. We haven't done that before. We've done hockey talk, but it's been all about the Rangers. That's going to make Myles happy. We're also going to talk about what's going on in New York baseball, including John Sterling's retirement from the Yankee broadcast booth. But first, we're going to take it to the hardwood, to the court. The NBA playoffs get underway on Saturday. New York Knickerbockers, they're going to open up their series with the Philadelphia 76ers. And this week, I know you saw this, things got a little bit spicy when Sixers backup center Paul Reed, he said Philly wanted to play the Knicks in the first round because, quote, folks, they were the easier matchup. So here's my question, Myles. Is this bulletin board material, and how do you think this will affect the Knicks' mindset and preparation heading into the series against the Sixers?
So I think Josh Hart said in more colorful language, I don't care, right? He just said, I don't care. I think bulletin board material is also something that often gets overblown. But when you look at this objectively, the separation between the 2 and the 7 seed was 3 games. That's how tight the Eastern Conference was. The separation between the 1 seed and the rest of the conference, so the Celtics were 14 games ahead of everyone else. So objectively, he's not wrong. All of these teams should feel like they could beat each other. And, I mean, part of the reason why the Knicks were so happy to get this 2 seed was because they can have home court advantage for as long as possible until they would eventually face the Celtics.
Yep.
So I think that he's not wrong. Should he have said that and maybe given any little edge? If you need to get up for the playoffs, especially on my way here, how many people I just saw outside in Knicks jerseys, that's not going to make the difference. That's not going to make Josh Hart, who is pound for pound maybe the hardest player in the league, like hardest working player in the league, that's not going to make him try a little bit harder. So I think it's kind of a silly non-issue, but sure, throw a little bit more gas on the fire. We'll take it.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm here for this. I'm fine with this. I like the trash talk. I like it. Things getting a little bit spicy. You talked about Josh Hart coming back with some colorful language for him. But, yes, I agree with you. Is it bulletin board material? Yeah, I asked the question, but I'm not sure. Why do we even still call it a bulletin board material? Nobody has a bulletin board up in the locker room. Whiteboard, yes. Bulletin board, no. But nobody says whiteboard material. I don't know why. That's another question we'll have to explore at another time. When you look at this series, though, Myles, Joel Embiid, he didn't look 100% on Wednesday in the play-in tournament against the Heat. But, look, the man is still the reigning MVP, okay? We understand he's still that. What strategies do you think the Knicks will employ to try to contain him, and how crucial will their defensive execution be in the series?
Well, this is where it comes back to that trade that the Knicks made, where they picked up OG Anunoby and they picked up also Precious Achiuwa. So I think that we've seen in recent weeks that Tibbs has started to kind of shorten that bench a little bit and get a playoff rotation going. But when you look at how Precious, who has the athleticism and also some length, he has bothered Joel Embiid in the past. I think what's important for the Knicks is to make sure that whenever he faces up, that they've got length in front of him. And then whenever he puts that ball on the floor, that's where that help is coming. And that's what they do. They really scheme well. And that's what Tibbs has done. And that's why this defense has been, nobody wants to face them. And I think that a large part of that starts on that end of the floor. So Embiid, yes, him not being 100% is big because we didn't see him really put his head down and go to the basket much in that game. And I know he's still working up conditioning. I'm thinking he's going to look better as the series goes on because there is some spacing. You do get to stretch out a little bit. You don't have as much travel as you do during the regular season. But there's the whole adage that, like, everyone's a little bit banged up too. But in terms of how the Knicks can show him looks, Hart is both Harts are good, right? Hartenstein and Josh Hart are both really important too for some of that help. But it's going to take a village, and I think the Knicks have that. They've got these bodies.
All right, so you're confident. You think the Knicks have the bodies to slow him down, and you're still respecting his game. And you're right. We didn't see him put the ball on the floor that much against the Heat on Wednesday in that play-in matchup that they won. What's your prediction for this series? Who do you got? You going Knicks? You going Sixers? How you rolling?
I've got Knicks. My question is Knicks in 5, Knicks in 6. That's where I'm stuck between. I'm really confident that this is the best Knicks team that I've seen in decades. And losing Julius Randle with how well he was playing really hurts because he was just playing, and it hurts more for him, I think, than it might actually hurt the team long term because they really have replaced a lot of that and were able to counter some stuff. But think about the playoffs last year. Julius, to his credit, worked really hard to come back, but he was not himself, and we saw that in him not closing out while everyone else is diving on the floor, or him making turnovers and not getting back. So Julius at 70% is not going to help this team. At 100%, he absolutely does. But I think now everyone knows who's in that locker room, who's in that huddle, and they can just all put their heads together and just go get those W's.
I think there's something to what you said. It's a word that you, myself, and Christina brought up a lot, is continuity with the Knicks, and we talked about that with the Liberty, but you see that coming together, and I'm with you on that. I wonder how much Julius Randle's injury actually is going to help this team moving forward, to help them form an identity that still was the same, but one that they know, right, Myles? And we'll see. All right, you're debating between Knicks in 5 or Knicks in 6. We'll see. It's going to be a good series, I think so.
Can I pin you down, too? What do you have
Pin me for? I've said it already, I'm going to stick with my prediction. I made a couple other places. I'm going Knicks in 5, folks. I don't think Embiid is fully healthy. I think the Knicks are a good team. I think people are going to find out how good their role players are. I think they know their identity, their culture. We know how good Jalen Brunson is, but I think these role players are going to really step up this year. Some of them, Josh Hart, I think expect to have a big series, second time in the playoffs with the Knicks. I think I'm going to go Knicks in 5.
And when you talk about bulletin board material, less what Paul Reed was saying, but more when you look at the sports books that opened the Knicks as dogs as a 2 seed.
Yeah.
That, I think, would have a little bit more power.
More of a power in terms of the bulletin board, whiteboard, whatever we're calling it. Yes, the Knicks were underdogs, and I kind of expected that would happen there with a lot of people favoring them, but I think that sort of shifted now with seeing how Embiid looked. But we'll see. Okay, Knicks in 5 or 6. I'm going with Knicks in 5. We'll see how the Knicks do in this series. Now, we're going to move over to the Diamond. We're going to talk about our New York baseball teams. And this was pretty much the big baseball news of the week, Myles. After 3 decades with the club, and fans know this, Yankee radio broadcaster John Sterling retired on Monday. I know this, Myles. I know you grew up rooting for the Yankees. You're a big Yankees fan. So I got to ask you this, because you saw his ceremony, you heard his ceremony that he had. What does John Sterling mean to you? Because I think we don't think about how much we listen to people and watch people who broadcast games and become a part of our lives as sports fans. What does he mean to you? And then also, what do you think his legacy is in New York broadcasting history?
So what does he mean to me? I think that when you talk about John Sterling, it's synonymous with Yankees baseball, right? And Susan now, too. He and Susan have been together for 2 decades at this point on the radio. But when I grew up, it was Sterling and Michael Kay together on the radio. And that was some of my early fandom. So he has just been a constant, and he's been just something that I just expected. I could turn on the radio, and I knew it was going to be John and Susan. So this was sudden. I think that's part of what has hit me. I don't want to speak for everybody. That's what hit me so hard, was just at the beginning of the week, we thought, okay, this is just, I heard he wasn't on the doubleheader last weekend, and maybe he's just taking some time and cutting back. And we're seeing that a little bit with Walt Clyde Frazier doing that on the Knicks side and not traveling as much. But then to a full-blown thing, my next thought, the full-blown retirement, my next thought is, oh no, I hope everything's okay health-wise. And it sounds today where he's like, I just want to chill a little bit, and he's absolutely earned that. But man, that was where I was getting emotional, was there was a supercut of all of his famous calls. And I remember where I was for David Cohn's perfect game. I remember where I was for the championships that they won. I remember where I was when I was hearing, the Burn Baby Burn, or hearing A-Bomb for A-Rod, or Jeter's last game. And there's just every single highlight in my ears and in my head that is being superimposed with his voice. His voice is over all of it. And that is just going to be his legacy for me personally. And I think for a lot of people, and it's not just one generation. When you talk 30 years, you're talking multiple generations that knew John Sterling as the voice of the Yankees. And I just wish him a happy retirement and just happy trails, because he's done that for so many people and for so many moments.
Yeah, like I was saying before, I think we don't think about how much broadcasters, sometimes even the roles I do, you do as journalists, how you become part of people, the fabric of people's lives in different ways, and how you could touch them. And you know, you had tweeted out, I want people to know, Myles had tweeted out about listening to the ceremony for John Sterling and how that made him emotional, and think about all those moments and stuff you have. And it means a lot, because sports mean so much to him. And I think the thing, and I said this to Steve Serby earlier, is the thing I think that makes me happy is he went out his way.
Yeah.
He talked about how he wants to just take time and enjoy and sit back and watch sports. And we all want to do that at some point. But I think for me, as sudden as it was, and even though I didn't grow up a Yankee fan, he's part of the New York broadcasting fabric. And I was happy for him that he was at peace with this, and now he's going to have his peace. And legend for sure.
And it was super on the nose, but he went out to Frank Sinatra's My Way.
Right.
That was the song that they played to play him off, and who's his favorite artist. And that is just someone who is so intertwined with all of the Yankee culture, even when it's a little bit hokey and a little too on the nose. Like, it makes sense for this man. And yeah, man, I like you said, I tweeted that out, and I was so emotional, and I did a good job. I did not cry on set, which was my fear today.
Did not cry on set, and if you had cried on set, it would have been just fine, because sports touches us in very specific places, and that is fine. So listen, there's emotion in sports, there's emotion on the field, there's emotion for us as fans, as journalists. We love sports, and that's part of it. And so we're going to give a New York sports rapid rundown salute to the great John Sterling for the work that he has done. Now, we do have to shift in baseball here. We're going to go across town to the Mets. They've won 11 out of their last 14 games. They are playing some good baseball after a rough start. 0-5 was how the Mets started. Now, Mets fans, do you know how this goes? The hopes are going up, Myles. What changes have you observed in the team's play in this last 14-game stretch where they've won 11 of them? What's changed with the New York Mets?
So the first thing whenever a team suddenly gets hot that I like to look at, and I know it's a small sample because we're still early in the season, but I look at the level of competition they're facing. And the Cincinnati Reds, Atlanta Braves, Kansas City Royals, and Pittsburgh Pirates are all above 500. And then they took a game from the Dodgers yesterday. So these are not teams that have been struggling out of the gates. They're not getting these easy wins. I know they started slow, and the Marlins, who have 4 wins, was one of the teams that they struggled with. But when you look at what they've done well, a lot of it is on the pitching side, which is pretty great, being that Kodai Senga isn't there, that they're still battling through some injuries. But it's also the bullpen. And I took this stat off the broadcast last night. From the 7th inning on, the Mets are outscoring opponents 46-14. So that is not just holding it down from the pitching side, but that's adding on. And I think that whenever you look at, and this is happening with both these baseball teams in New York, is that they are both really working counts up and down the lineup. And when you're watching a pitcher get out of there in the 5th inning or the 6th inning, and you have your 7, 8, and 9 hitters that have seen 4 or 5 pitches in an at-bat, then they are really locked in. And then there's just no break. And I think that that's something that the Mets have done really well. They're getting that production from down low. And then these pitchers, there's no spot that you can come in and say, okay, this is going to be my easy inning. And I think all of that comes together, and they're playing good baseball. They're also just playing opportunistic baseball. They're taking advantage of errors. They're making sure that they're making the plays that they have to make. And this is great. This is great. We need all these teams to be great and pushing each other.
Yeah, we know. We definitely need that in New York. Also gives us good things to talk about. We don't have to be depressed talking about some of this stuff. But yeah, they are playing excellently well at this point. And I talked to a fellow journalist who's a Mets fan who a couple of weeks ago, when they were, 0-5 or whatever they were, maybe even a little bit after that, said, oh, this Mets team stinks. They don't look good. Now this fan is telling me, hey, they're looking really good. So things can change in the New York minute, as we've seen in the Mets right now. I think for all you said, the late pitching with the bullpen, the late run scoring, particularly from the bottom of the order, has been really good. We'll see if they can keep it up. But Mets fans have a little bit more hope than they did a couple of weeks ago, and that's never bad around here. Now we go to the ice, and we're going to do something we haven't done on the show, and that's talk about the New York Islanders here. And you're nodding your head because you grew up an Islanders fan. I know this makes you happy. This team won 8 out of the last 9 regular season games, head into the postseason and facing off with the Carolina Hurricanes. What elements of the Isles game has clicked for them at the right time? Feels like it's the right time for them, how they've been playing. What have you liked how they've played to close out the season and now get into the playoffs?
Yeah, so this was a very, very roller coaster, up and down kind of season for the Islanders. But what was big for them is a couple of weeks ago, it looked like they were completely out. And then the roller coaster, they hit that high point again and finished hot. And I think what really has clicked for them, and it took a little while, was the shift from Lane Lambert to bringing in Patrick Waugh. And there was a great article from Arthur Staple in The Athletic where he had a quote from J.G. Pageau saying that it's about their identity and that they're competing hard every shift. And that's something that has been the identity of this team, but you could have seen since losing Barry Trotz, they have not really embodied that. So when it's working harder, some of it is this is a team that is always going to be chasing after it defensively and then trying to turn that into offense. And they're still defense first. But what this piece and what I've seen also has really highlighted was a shift in their defensive philosophy, is that they're playing a lot more man instead of waiting back in zones and then making sure that no one's getting behind them. Now they're really attacking more and forcing the action a little bit more. And that really has started to yield some results. And I think that that's big when you go into a series where they are a huge underdog.
Yeah, and they are a huge underdog in this one, but I think there's that expectation that you were talking about, right? Where it's not expectation, but you've seen it. We've seen them play very scrappy. They seem to have taken on the identity that Patrick Waugh has brought to the team since they've taken over. And you're right, it was up and down. We can't forget about the coaching change with Lane Lambert leaving in the middle of the season and Patrick Waugh taking over. That matters in the whole thing, but they're playing their best hockey when you want to at the right time of the year. And so that brings us to the series with the Hurricanes. And here's the thing, okay, you like how your team's been looking, 8 out of 9 going to this one. What do you think of their chances against the Hurricanes with them coming in hot? And then to take that a step further, do you think they can be a dangerous team? Can this core of this Islanders group be a dangerous team here in the Stanley Cup playoffs?
So I think more than any other sport, hockey seeding does not matter. It's a brand new season as soon as you get into the postseason, as soon as you get to those playoffs, because we've seen a goalie gets hot and then you've got a 7 seed, an 8 seed making it all the way through. It's really going to be about controlling the pace, controlling the blue line, controlling that neutral zone, because Carolina is a team that loves to push. And if the Islanders are trying to match them with physicality, they need to make sure that they are not drawing whistles for it, because the Isles had the worst penalty kill in the league, while the Hurricanes had the second best offensive unit on the penalty.
So something's got to give.
Man, something's got to give there. What does help is that the Isles were the second fewest penalized team, so they weren't committing those blunders, but when they did, they could knock it out of their own way. So I think part of that is you look at just the speed up and down the lineup, and when you look at the Isles, when the Isles penalty unit, they're not doing anything. So I think keep it to 5-on-5 hockey as much as you can, and then maybe you've got a shot. And it's going to come down to the goaltending. And I think that's the one edge that the Islanders have, even though right now they're kind of in the same situation, just flipped, that they were 2 years ago, where Varlamov was the starter and then Sorokin got hot and was starting in the playoffs. And now it's Sorokin's team, and Varley's 36, 37 at this point, and now he got hot at the end of the season, and they already said he's starting game 1. So ride the hot hand there, but I still think that that's where the edge could be for the Isles. One thing that I did note is that in the 4 games these teams played where they did split, the Hurricanes shot 162 times, the Islanders shot 100 times. So if you're giving up 15 more shots per game, that's when you have to make sure that you're helping out your goaltenders, that you're not putting them into positions where they're outmanned, because you're going to have to make it up in the margins.
Yeah, going to have to do that, and we'll see if the Isles can do that on Saturday. They open up their series with the Hurricanes. And do you have a prediction for that? I'm going to put you on a prediction hot seat again. Do you have a prediction for your Isles against the Hurricanes?
So I don't know that the Islanders, even playing so hot right now, no team has been hotter than the Hurricanes since the start of the calendar year. Since January 1st, they are 32-10-3. So I think they might still have something to prove here, and that they're just kind of clicking right now. I think the Canes take it, but it's going to be a really close. There are going to be a few overtime games here, which have not worked out for the Islanders this year.
No, it has not this year.
But I've got Canes in 6.
All right, Canes in 6. Okay, there you go. I know it hurts your heart to say that. I know it does.
And I hope I'm wrong.
Whenever we make picks like that against our team, we do hope that they're wrong. We'll see how the Isles do on the ice in these Stanley Cup playoffs. Now, we've got ourselves a bonus question. Like to have something extra. A lot of people know Myles, have seen Myles here with me doing a lot of WNBA talk, but there's been a lot of discourse, and you and I were talking about this before we started recording, around the WNBA this week, particularly with the WNBA draft folks, was this week, and reports came out that Caitlin Clark is nearing an endorsement deal worth well over $20 million with Nike and a signature shoe. Now, Clark has received a shoe deal without playing a WNBA game, but the talk has been around A'ja Wilson, who I would say is the face of the W, 2-time MVP, Defensive Player of the Year winner, 5-time All-Star, also the author of a New York Times best-selling book. She does not have a shoe deal. There have been, you've seen this, there's been a plethora of sports journalists, most notably black women, who cover women's basketball and women's sports, who've noted there are clear differences in who has received a signature shoe in deals in the NBA, WNBA, and who doesn't. I know you've seen this discussion on social media about the marketability of WNBA athletes. So the question I have here, and I'm glad to have this discussion with you because it's a nuanced discussion that needs to be had. Is Caitlin Clark getting a shoe deal with Nike before A'ja Wilson problematic? And is this a bad look for Nike on this, or does this say more about us as a society as a whole and how we view who's marketable and who's not?
So like you said, this is a nuanced discussion. So I think we need to kind of parse it out a little bit and start with saying, is Caitlin Clark getting a shoe deal a good thing or a bad thing? And it is objectively, it's a great thing. It's a great thing because she has been, and I'm going to start calling her Caitlin the Catalyst, because what she's done for the W, for women's basketball in terms of mainstream, is she really upped that conversation. And I think it was great, even though unfortunately she did not win in the championship game, that she made it that far, because we saw those record numbers come up.
Absolutely.
The draft we spoke about the other day was 4 times the highest number in terms of ratings than ever before. It was 2.4 million. It had been 600,000 20 years ago, and that was the previous high. So what Caitlin is doing is really unprecedented. Now, a separate question is, does A'ja Wilson deserve a signature sneaker? And the answer to that is also objectively yes. This should have happened a long time ago. And I think that's what some of this vitriol is coming from, is too many people are pitting them against one another. And I don't think the conversation should be one or the other. And you asked if Nike has made a mistake in not already having that A'ja shoe out. And my answer is yes. That like you said, it sounded like, to throw back to Game of Thrones when Daenerys was rolling through all her titles. That's what it sounded like when you were just like, A'ja did this. She's a best-selling author, instant best-selling author, 2-time MVP, reigning finals MVP, multi-time champion, college champion. She's done everything that you can possibly ask for, and she's so marketable. She's so charismatic. She checks literally every box, and if she's not, then my thing to say to Nike is, then you need to recalibrate what those boxes you're asking to be checked are. Because the fans have showed time and time again that they are going to buy A'ja merch. They are going to her statue in South Carolina. They are doing everything to say, this is our player. This is our favorite player. And it's impossible to have this conversation without talking about the racial dynamics that we've seen. And if it's Nike saying that they don't think a black woman is going to sell these sneakers, then the metrics are a bad look for our country, which is unfortunately not shocking.
No, it's not.
Right. But it's also, it goes into those marketing meetings and it says, who are these people that are making those decisions to say, because it is a partially subjective question too, A'ja Wilson will not sell a sneaker, because I can guarantee that she's going to back that up. She's going to sell that out, and it'll take months by the time A'ja gets a shoe for you to be able to get one.
Yeah, no, I agree. I love everything you said. I saw you discuss this on social media in the best way that you can on Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it these days, the best you can, because there's more nuance to this, I think, than meets this eye. And where I agree with you 100%, I agree with everything you said 100%, but I think there's no way to have this discussion without talking about race. And you do not have to pit these two women against each other. That's not the thing here. You can say Caitlin Clark absolutely deserves a shoe deal. Absolutely. And it's good for the game, as you brought up as well, too. I think we both agree, as people who love women's basketball, this is amazing for the game. We also recognize what A'ja Wilson has done for the game, which has been amazing as well, too. And she can also deserve a shoe deal. And guess what, folks? Two things can be true. This can happen.
Yeah.
Two things can be true.
And I think even further than that, we saw Sabrina Ionescu's shoe last year. Everyone is wearing those shoes. I was wearing it at the draft.
Right.
It was great. And it's a very comfortable sneaker. But besides from that, you're seeing NBA players rocking that too.
Yep.
And it's I think that's how the cultural conversation shifts, is the people that are saying bad stuff about A'ja Wilson are coming to the conversation either right now or they're coming into it already disingenuously, where they are trying to say, Caitlin is my GOAT because Caitlin is what I've seen, and no one has brought me to the TV before. And this is what I said to you before. If you go to a party, right, you don't just walk up, put your phone on the aux and say, I'm controlling the music right now.
Yeah. I mean, you can do that. I'm not sure how well it's going to end for you, but you can do it.
You stay back, you feel out the vibe a little bit, you see what everyone else is talking about, and then, all right, you get into the rhythm a little bit. That's all I'm asking for these new fans, because we are so... And I will speak for at least myself, but I'll say a majority of media is really excited about what this year is going to look for. Hopefully it means more jobs for people like freelancers like me. That would be great.
Yep.
But we're excited about this energy. And this is also not something that started with Caitlin. This has been every year. It's been growing and growing. I will say she's the biggest blip that we've seen.
Yeah.
But you look at the Chicago Sky, who drafted Angel Reese and Camila Cardoso, and in the 24 hours after the draft, they had gained 100,000 Instagram followers. So that's a team that Caitlin did not go to, that is seeing a huge bump from players that were covered in college. So what we need to do is we need to make sure as media that we're telling more stories than just the Caitlin Clarks, that we're also talking about Camila, and we're also talking about Angel, and that we're bringing that to the next level, because that's what people are connecting with. It's not just the logo threes, although logo threes are really sexy to everybody. We love to see those. But it's also the fact that we get to see these stories. We get to empathize with these people as humans and not just as athletes. And that's what's really contributing to the growth. And we're hoping that trickles down to everyone else, because we, as media and as fans of women's basketball, are so glad that we're at this moment. The conversation has shifted from some of the really, really awful stuff to now some actual awful basketball conversations. That's a step in the right direction. And soon, maybe we'll find mutual respect, maybe we won't. But I think that there are going to be a lot more people having that conversation. And it's not good for either side to shut each other out.
I agree. I don't think it's good at all. But I know you are, as somebody who works for Winsider and covers the Liberty and does a lot with me here. We love the growth of this game. The growth of this game is really beautiful right now, and it's really good. And we'll be talking a lot more women's basketball, a lot more Liberty on this show in the coming weeks, because Liberty season's about to get started. I can't believe we're back here already, Myles. Yep. We're back to that point. You'll be on with me a lot on Got Game and other things here, too. We'll be talking a lot of Liberty hoops, so I'm glad. But first time.
Yeah.
On the New York Sports Rapid Rundown. You've sat in this chair a bunch of other times before, but first time on this show. Thank you, man. It was good. Did you enjoy the experience?
I loved it. I got to talk about more than just one sport, which I love. I love women's basketball. But yeah, I have thoughts. I have lots of group chats for lots of different sports.
There we go. Don't box Myles in. Myles is great at what he does in the W, but he's got a lot more to share than just that. He's not a one-trick pony, and that's something I like about him. That is Myles Ehrlich. Check out his work with Winsider. Also, check him out. His great podcast with our friend Owen Pence. Pull Up with Myles and Owen. Check that podcast out. It's a really, really good one. You got to check that one out. Myles, I'm going to have you back here again, my man.
Thanks so much, Dex. Look forward to it.
Yes, definitely. Next week, no new episode of New York Sports Rapid Rundown. I'm taking a little bit of break, not a John Sterling retirement break, but I will be gone for a bit, enjoying my birthday weekend. I will be doing that. We will see you guys in May on the next edition of the New York Sports Rapid Rundown.